Good afternoon. We are expecting some more people, but we'll start because we only have 25 minutes. Welcome in this workshop. My name is Hilde Colpin and I'm from the University of Leuven in Belgium. I will host this workshop together with my colleague Hilde. Originally, the workshop was to be hosted by our postdoctoral researcher Chloé Finet, but unfortunately she could not make it, so we took it over from her. Originally, we would also have 45 minutes for this workshop, but then we got 25. But as many things in current times, we will be flexible and we will make the best of it. With this workshop, we would like to share some thoughts about the development of a workshop for a short intervention aimed at supporting teachers to build positive relationships with their students and to effectively deal with bullying. When it comes to the prevention and the reduction of bullying, teachers have a key role to play because they are the responsible adults in the classroom. And research has shown that the way that teachers interact with their students may impact the bullying and victimization among students in their classroom. In addition, it also has been shown that teachers may impact the relationships among the students in their class, and therefore it has been said that teachers have an invisible hand in the classroom peer dynamics. However, despite their important responsibility and potential impact on bullying and on the peer relations in their class, teachers are often not well prepared for that role. In general, they lack knowledge and training. For instance, in our context in Belgium, teachers do not have mandatory training in anti-bullying intervention. Related to that, teachers often feel insecure about how to deal with bullying incidents among their students. And this despite the fact that the students themselves and parents clearly expect them to intervene when bullying occurs. Further, we also have demonstrated in previous research that it is not always easy for teachers to build positive relations with their students. For instance, in 2 studies, we observed that teachers used 8 times more reprimands than compliments in their class. So, to meet this need, we developed a research-based teacher training, a short training, aimed at reducing bullying and its negative consequences by promoting high-quality teacher-student interactions in upper elementary school. Now, according to a theoretical model by Jest and Rodkin, teachers can impact the peer ecology, so the peer dynamics in the classroom and student outcomes in 2 different ways. First, they can do this by using intentional strategies to impact the peer network, such as intervening when students are bullied. And second, they can impact the peer ecology and student outcomes by their day-to-day interactions with their students at the classroom level, so at the group level, but also at the individual level. And so based on this theoretical model, we focused the teacher intervention, the teacher training, on first teachers' bullying management, more specifically their responses to bullying incidents among their students, and second, the daily teacher-student interaction quality. We aim to test the effect of this intervention on students and teachers in an experimental study, but we won't talk about that today. But if people are interested in the design and the procedure of this study, they can come to me afterwards. The intervention was developed using the intervention mapping protocol, and that is a stepwise approach to develop theory and research-based interventions, which has been adopted from health psychology. First, there is a theoretical model of the problem, a logic model called in this approach, and this logic model, this theoretical model, is translated in intervention objectives, intervention outcomes. So it is asked, what do we aim with this intervention based on the theoretical model? Then the intervention is designed and the intervention is produced. Then it is implemented and evaluated. These are the 6 steps. I cannot go into this really detailed and fine-grained approach to develop interventions, but I just want to give some illustrations. Here you see how complex it is, actually. You see here the 2 main targets of our intervention: teachers' practices for promoting positive teacher-student relationships, and then teachers' practices for promoting positive relations among the students, especially the teachers' responses to bullying. And then to the left, you see the possible predictors of these 2 core variables, and at the right, you see the outcomes, the hypothesized outcomes. Just to be somewhat more specific, so based on this logic theoretical model, a logic model of change was developed, and for each of the variables there were intervention outcomes, and then more specific outcomes for each global objective. For instance, if the objective was the teacher recognizes bullying incidents, then more specific goals were formulated at the level of the knowledge of the teacher. What does the teacher has to know to recognize bullying incidents? Which skills does she need? What attitudes are necessary? And what about the social norms in the teacher team, in the teaching team? And then again, in the next step, these objectives, they were translated in specific activities. For instance, in this case, watching and discussing a video about realistic, real-life-based playground bullying. So the intervention will be 3 half days. We know that is not much, but it corresponds to the number of days that teachers can close their class, that schools can close their doors for professional training of teachers in Flanders, Belgium, where we work. So in terms of feasibility of both our study and the eventual further dissemination later on, if the intervention proves to be effective, we took this decision about the 3 half days. All grade 4 to 6 teachers in a school will be offered the intervention, so as a team. And the intervention will be implemented by an experienced teacher trainer in anti-bullying intervention, who is a teacher himself. And that is my colleague, Hilde, and he will tell you somewhat more about each of the intervention sessions.
Thank you, Hilde. Hello, nice to meet you all. As you can see on this picture, here you have the different phases of the research process, and here you see the 3 half days of training in between the pre-test and the post-test. On day 1, to give an idea, on day 1 we explore bullying as a particular phenomenon. What does it look like? Why does it show up? What are the signals on the individual and group level? What's the impact? Day 2 takes a closer look at what teacher can do to prevent. It's focused on prevention. What can I do to prevent bullying and cyberbullying? And on the 3rd day, we go up to the indicated actions. So then, what can teacher do to react on bullying incidents? And how can they generate, for instance, also cooperation at that moment with the parents? Based on the intervention mapping protocol, as Hilde said, we developed these 3 days of training. I will now take a closer look at the content of all the content and the methods used during the training. And in this slide, you can see an overview of the main content topics of the first training day. As you can see, we will focus on the definition and nature of bullying, and cyberbullying. To encourage the teachers' involvement, we supplement the theoretical chapter, let's say, of the training by exploring also the personal experiences of the teachers themselves. That's what is meant with the experiential view on bullying and cyberbullying. How did they deal with bullying when they were young? What did they think, feel? How did they react when it became part of their own school life? And thereafter, we get a closer look on bullying as a social phenomenon and a group dynamic phenomenon. And finally, we invite the participants to reflect on their own classroom and school practice. We always look for the combination between theory, practice, and then practice in different ways. Can also be in relationship to the group, but also in relationship to colleagues or in relationship to the parents, for instance. Oh, is this still the same, I guess? Yep. We don't have the intention to just inform teachers or to give them a greater knowledge about bullying and cyberbullying. We also try to motivate and encourage them to act frankly, directly, and consistently to prevent or address bullying in their classrooms, in their learning groups, and in their school. And therefore, we decided to combine at least 3 different methodologies to reach that goal. You must take into account that, as Hilde already mentioned, more than, I guess, 95% of our teachers didn't learn anything about bullying or group dynamics during their formation to become a teacher. So there is a big lack of information, and therefore there has to be a theoretical part, of course, in the training. And that is why each training day has to include some of these theoretical elements. To enlarge the impact of this theoretical part, we also introduce psychoeducation and moments of active and interactive learning, like reflection on own practice, opening up discussions on this practice, role play, group discussions, kind of visualization of what should be done in a certain situation. You will surely recognize this by looking at our next slides too. Day 2, the content of day 2, then we will focus on the school policy and on the role of the individual teacher. We will first explain what is meant by a whole school approach, because they will not be aware of it. And to make it more practical, we are going to challenge each team to make a quick scan of their own anti-bullying policy, the existing anti-bullying policy. We just give them an instrument to do that, and it will open the discussion at that moment. I already know it because I already have used it when I'm working with schools, and it's also very relevant because then they see how different parts of schools policy are linked to one another. Yeah? Although the school and the team level is very important, we will also invite the participants to reflect on the responsibility of the individual teacher. It's not only the context and the team, but it's also the individual teacher that can play a very important role. And each member of the school team will be invited to overthink here his own needs. What does me hesitate? What do I need? What kind of support is lacking at this moment in our school? And we will also ask them what contributes to their professional ability and self-esteem, and what they can do about it themselves to strengthen that. At the end of this training day, we will show them a video, probably you know him, you have seen it already, of the Japanese teacher Kanamori. Yeah? We will use this as a very realistic view on what a teacher can do and what it means when you do the right things, what kind of things can happen in your class group and in the interaction with your children. Yeah? Dus this role model gives an example of what can happen when theory becomes practice. On this slide, you can see the inventory of the methods used on the methodologies used on day 2 of the training. And we again look for the combination of the 3 things that you can see: theory, practice, and reflection. Every theoretical part is completed with moments of self-reflection, deep level learning, and discussions of their own practices. On day 3, then we focus, as I already said, on the indicated actions, things teachers can do when things went wrong. Yeah? And we make them aware we make them aware of what will be possible, what is essential, and what should be done, and what kind of methodologies can you use to intervene. So they get the theoretical background that is needed to intervene in a non-confronting or confronting way. And we will also introduce them in a more restorative approach. And that means that you're not going to just focus on the rules, but you mainly focus on what is the interaction about and what happened within the interaction, and what do children or the group need when there is a tension caused by bullying or cyberbullying. What do the individuals in this group need, and what can you do about it? And at the end of day 3, we encourage the school team to invest in the participation also of the parents. And they are a very important partner. We don't think it's wise to just avoid that issue. We have to introduce it, because when there is an escalation and you should take action, it's important that children can see that all the adults are engaged in finding a solution, in marking this is not okay, what's happening, and we are here to support you and do the right things. So you have to really cooperate with parents when problems arises. And at the end, fully in line with what you already saw in day 1 and day 2. Day 3 is also combining different methodologies, as you can see. You can read them by looking at the slide. And once again, we make the choice to address teachers in several ways to encourage them and to take action. Probably you can tell something about this research product. And then we have one question that we will ask you just to react on what we presented.
Maybe you can already do the question.
I will. Okay, yes. So we have one question for you. We think that there are practitioners and researchers in the group here. Where are the practitioners? Are there practitioners? Yeah, that's good to know. So based on your own research or practices, what do you think is essential for a training that aims to get teachers engaged in addressing bullying? What kind of topics should you include, are important for you? And what kind of methodologies might be useful and weren't mentioned, for instance, in what we presented? Okay? Thank you. If you have any suggestions or ideas, I start giving the training within a few weeks, so probably I can just add some things. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Something that just popped into my mind is about what we can about victims' coping strategies and how we cannot let them alone to face bullying, because all the strategies that they can reasonably put into practice as children or teenagers, well, most of them are not effective based on the qualitative studies and so on. And also the goal is also to deconstruct this idea of victims as being passive, in front of bullying. So the idea is really, the take-home message is really, they try everything they can possibly try, and almost nothing works. So we need, as adults, well, this is our responsibility, because we cannot expect them to deal with that alone. And also, our most frequent advice as adults, to ignore them.
Yeah, that is not working.
That doesn't work, absolutely not. So we should stop giving them advice that are not effective. So that's just something.
Yeah, and therefore we really will focus on these group dynamics and why do children choose that or that role? What is coming up in their mind at that moment? We have to understand that so that we can just prevent this kind of difficult relationships, tension between these pupils. And we make them aware that we, for instance, like in the Netherlands, we talk about the golden weeks, and that it's very important to start your school year by making the group very comfortable, that they feel at ease in the group, that they are safe, that you make clear what are the rules, how do we want to interact, and if there is a problem, how can we help one another. And then you build up just connectedness between your children, and that will be preventive. But also when things go wrong, you have to look at the group. The group is part of the solution, like the parents are and the teachers are. The group is also part of the solution. So we try to make them aware that they just have to be open-minded and not only focused on this has to stop immediately, because at that moment then you see that they just think about rules, they think about punishment, and they don't think about what's the most comfortable way to find a solution to this interaction problem.
One suggestion I might have is that since your intervention is related to network-related teaching practice, I do have a practitioner background as well as researcher, and like when you look at the older literature of teacher-student attunement, then often teachers don't really know exactly how victimization happening or friendship is going on among pupils, because their perception often quite differ from their own subjective or perception and what actually happening in a peer dynamic. So for instance, at the early stage of my PhD research, as also school teacher by then, I kind of do sort of peer nomination of my classroom, so who's victimized, and also I rated them and compare how correct, accurate I perceive them. And surprisingly, some student, he's relatively way less victimization, but I somehow exaggerated how victimized he was. And I'm curious what kind of factors or my attribution is really kind of ended up thinking is as a severe victim. So these elements, why some teachers are really have different perception when it comes to teacher attunement, and if we can know why it is, then it might be helpful to enhance your intervention effort, I guess.
Thank you. We will surely think about it. For me, it's therefore based on the same arguments, let's say. I think it's very important that we introduce in day 2, we will start with it, how to communicate. We could hear it already in some of the keynotes and other places, that you should listen to the pupils, not fill in. And therefore it's, to my opinion, very important that the basics of how to communicate, not to judge, but just listen to what a child has to tell you. And there you can make yourself an idea about what is going on. But you have to listen to what they experience, of course.
The other interesting aspect would be what kind of peer... what was their experience as a youth? Because if they have a victimized youth or adolescents, they might have better knowledge or some different knowledge about friendship dynamic. or some teachers around the same district, some of teachers have really privileged background, and these people, usually teachers, have no idea how, like, what would be the aggressive behavior or relational aggression to be like. So I don't, for these two teachers, it might be like ideal to provide some kind of more detailed kind of in training for what is relational aggression like in the classroom. So I don't. I think that also depends on what kind of social motivational background of teachers like.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I got a sign that we have to end up the workshop, but if there are more ideas or questions, please do not hesitate to come to us to share it with us. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.